I feel like I'm in the water. What are those bubbles for?
So they get oxygen. What is this creature down in the bottom?
A sunfish.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's right, you're right.
Oh. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There's some over here that are teeny.
That is so beautiful.
Look, one broke. You know what I feel? I wish I was a fish.
You wish you were a fish?
There are massive, unrecognized changes of geologic scale taking place in the ocean. Ocean chemistry is being altered on a scale not seen for millions of years, and we don't know what the consequences will be.
We are heading into some pretty dangerous territory here.
It's not just the magnitude of the change, it's the rate of change that species can't adapt to.
I think we've gone past the point now whereby we can avoid losing significant species. We're playing poker. If we lose at the poker, we could have a lot of problems for civilization.
We now know that the absorption of carbon dioxide actually changes the very chemistry of our oceans. We risk not just damaging the ocean's ecosystem, we are threatening its very foundation.
You're singing as well?
Look where you're going. Look where you're going. Keep your eyes. Stop.
I'm ready to do. Oh, I'm on the bike.
So they want to go on the bike. Will that help you do better? Okay.
This is my grandson, Elias.
I'm Elias.
Elias calls me bestified, which is grandfather in Norwegian. Elias is a mischievous rascal. He's smart, he's inventive, and he's the kind of grandson that anyone would want.
I'll help you.
You want to carry the front end? I am now a retired educator who spends more time than I probably should thinking about my grandchildren and what their lives are going to be like. I continue to try to understand what's going on environmentally, and I worry a lot about the world that Elias is inheriting. One weekend, after Elias and his family had been visiting, I opened an issue of The New Yorker and read the article by Elizabeth Colbert called The Darkening Sea, about this phenomenon I'd never heard of called ocean acidification. I knew that modern technology had made it easier for the oceans to be overfished. What I didn't know was that so much of the carbon dioxide was falling into the ocean and creating a horrible problem. I clearly need more answers, and I need to go to the source. Elizabeth, Sven Huseby. I have to tell you, I read this article last November that you had written for The New Yorker. I hope I'm not overstating it, but my life really hasn't been the same since. I have become somewhat obsessed with ocean acidification.
There was this huge untold story, that people really didn't know. They knew about global warming, vaguely, you know, in sort of this mushy way, but they really just had no idea about what was happening to the oceans. And on some level, ocean acidification it's just the flip side of global warming. Whatever you put into the air ends up in the ocean. It's huge. I mean, the hugeness, it's everything. It really is everything about how we live.
I'm curious whether you ever have this discussion with your own children.
One of them said to me the other day, this is the problem of being born so late. You know, that the world is really a, you know, degraded place. And that was that was sad for a parent.
Mm-hmm. There are now 387 parts per million of CO2 in the air, the highest figure we've had in 650,000 years. I just can't believe that. Pteropods are tiny marine organisms at the bottom of the food chain. About the size of a child's fingernail. Wow. Oh boy. Known as sea butterflies, they swim by a pair of wing-like flaps and grow delicate shells for protection. Look at that. Look at that. I adore them. Their shells, however, are beginning to dissolve from the ocean's changing chemistry, and this is threatening the entire food chain. Dear Elias, today I'm starting a journey. And the purpose of this journey is to find out some things about the world's oceans that I don't really understand. I'm on my way to Seattle, where I spent a good deal of my own childhood. It is by the sea. As a matter of fact, all the places I lived when I was growing up were by the sea. I was born in Norway across the ocean. It was an ocean that was filled with fish. We owned a fish market. We sold fish, we sold crabs, we sold so much. That fish store was the center of my world. In fact, my parents met in that fish store. My mother, who was working as a maid, used to come in and buy fish 4 times a week from this debonair fellow across the counter. And within a few years, they were married. So I owe a lot to fish, and so do you. When I was your age, we moved to a small village in Alaska where my parents worked in a salmon cannery. I would walk down the beach and there would be an old man mending salmon nets, and I would listen to him tell me stories about the village, about fishing, about his youth, and all the time the water was lapping at our feet. When I was 9 years old, we came to Seattle, Washington, and Elias, we ate fish. We ate fish 6 days a week. The talk at home was always that it was simply a matter of the right time and we would move back to Norway. But the way it turned out, that so-called right time never came.
This is a kind of a historic moment. For the first time, we're bringing together all the scientists that actually work on this problem for the Pacific Northwest.
From a fishing industry point of view,
Acidification is an unambiguous threat. This is a short look at what's at stake. 60 to 100 billion bucks in seafood trade worldwide. U.S. commercial fisheries are valued at about 28 plus billion. If you're a shellfish, you're in trouble. And most of the things that the fish we like to eat, they eat some kind of shellfish. When you show that pteropods start dissolving within 48 hours in the water we already have in the Gulf of Alaska, that's not slight. That's not some future prospect. That's now.
We, the scientific communities, were wrong. We had underestimated both the magnitude and the rate of global climate change. Are we involved in another mass extinction event for corals, for instance? When such events take place, it takes millions of years for the corals to come back.
Are we screwed? Is it already too late?
Are we screwed? Yeah, to a considerable extent. A world of 500 ppm is a world of enormous environmental destruction. We ought to recognize that and say it. And we cannot stop there. That is not an acceptable final threshold. But can we do any better than that now? I don't know.
I know you're only 5 years old, Elias, so I may not send this letter until you're much older. I'm writing to share with you my worries about what my generation is leaving to yours. I'm 65 now, and when you're ready to read this, you might well ask what I did to help solve this problem. I really believe that the most important thing is to gather as much information as possible to pass on to you and others about what is happening in our oceans. My life has taught me that the power to affect change begins with knowledge.
We have all the components to study ocean acidification for the very first time together on this morning.
We've moved well beyond just figuring out what's the temperature change. There are chemistry changes, there are ecosystem changes, there are biological changes. All of these things are happening all at once.
We always thought of CO2 as a waste product of all of the production of fossil fuels from coal and oil and automobiles. We just dumped it into the atmosphere and we said, no problem, the oceans will suck it up. And sure enough, the oceans do suck it up.
We first approached all this with the idea that, wow, the oceans are performing this tremendous service for humankind. It's absorbing 22 million tons of CO2 a day. So we first approached this saying, great, let's go figure out how this is working. Maybe we can enhance it. It wasn't until we got out there and actually quantified that the oceans have absorbed 118 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide. A metric ton is about how much a small car weighs. That we've put the equivalent of 118 billion VW bugs worth of CO2 into the ocean over the last 200 years. And 43% of that has happened just in the last 20 years. And it's growing exponentially. As we start to project out into the future, it really gets scary. And people say, oh, well, the oceans are huge. We could never really affect the oceans. Well, we are.
I'm on my way to Alaska now, where I haven't been in 55 years. This time, I'm meeting with Jeff Short, one of the scientists at the conference. He has a young son, and I'm hoping they can share with me something about how they talk about these difficult issues.
In winter, sometimes it gets pretty nippy. In the city, it's all noisy. It's not as quiet, there's more pollution. Here it's pretty fresh and clean. I like all the wildlife. You can see different species of fish out in the water. Sometimes you can see whales. And there's too many different species of bugs to even count. It's really neat. I like the glacier a lot. And there's these oddly shaped icebergs. Some look like battleships. Then there's this big ice cliff with cracks in it. And there's just this huge ice field. It's not as big as it used to be, but...
We have tried to not hide from him the fact that the planet is going to undergo unprecedented change over the course of his lifetime. It's a tremendously high-stakes crapshoot. And the more acid we put in the ocean, the more likely it is that fundamentally bad things will happen. Like, for example, no more shellfish or no more coral reefs. And this is, for as far as humans are concerned, no more of those things ever. You know, we've always had crises to face. Every generation has had terrible crises to face. When I grew up, it was nuclear war. We were worried about, we had these drills in school. There were going to be atomic bombs. People had shelters, and it was a real fear. This is a worse fear because that's a political problem that you can solve by talking amongst people, and that largely has occurred so far. This isn't something that you can't talk nature out of this.
Hi, Bear.
How are you?
Good. Are you coming to visit soon?
Yes, I'll be there tomorrow afternoon. Can I take you to school on Monday?
Yeah.
What's out here, Elias?
I've seen great white.
A great white?
A great white shark. They can leap really high.
And what do the great whites eat?
Fish and seals.
They eat seals?
Yeah. And sometimes they mistake surfers as seals.
Because they think that the surfer is a seal?
Yeah, because the surfers are dressed in black.
Got it. So they actually look a little bit like seals.
I think I made a note of it in one of my notebooks.
And will you introduce me to your teacher?
Sure.
And what's her name?
Liz.
Liz, okay.
Is this 8:30?
Yep, exactly 8:30 now.
Let's go a little faster. Maybe we could run.
I have my running shoes.
This is fun.
I graduated from college in the 1960s, and I wrestled with what came next. I applied to the Peace Corps, and I was accepted. But a professor that I had been working with suggested that I go visit a school up in Vermont. There I took a job as a history teacher and found an extraordinary chance to teach, to learn, and to watch young people grow.
Majority dictates, and it changes the whole concept of American government because the same protection for minority opinions and minority groups could not be maintained within that kind of a structure.
It was the beginning of a time of political turmoil in this country. We had just come through a very difficult part of the civil rights era, and we had decided to commit more and more resources to Vietnam.
The government is obviously for the war in Vietnam, otherwise they would not be there, right?
So as a teacher at that time, a lot of discussion was about protest, was about change, was about looking at how you wanted the world to be.
I mean, there are lots of things that have been changed because people had the will to keep fighting against them.
And as a young person, you really felt that change was possible. As an educator, I know how important it is to be able to explain the basics. But I taught history for 25 years, not science. I'm hoping that a visit with my friend Deborah Williams will give me a crash course in the chemistry of ocean acidification.
How do you communicate a topic like this?
Probably the thing that resonates the best is reminding people that when they were little, their mother probably said, don't drink cola or another soft drink before you go to bed because it will rot your teeth. And when I mention that, people shake their heads up and down, or say, and maybe if you're a parent, you've mentioned that to your child, and people shake their heads up and down. And so what I thought might be fun is to do an experiment. I contacted a few friends of mine who have young children and asked, do any of you have any baby teeth you can spare? So what I thought we'd do first is just pour out, and these are brand new. Oh boy, good thing we didn't have an explosion at the table. So we've got the cola, and then nothing but spring water and carbonation, which is
Carbonic acid, carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide. Let's see first what the acidity of the cola is. Now remember, of course, the pH of pure water is 7. It's like, what, 2.5?
And 2 indicates what?
2 means it is quite acidic.
It's below 7.
Oh, yes, dramatically below 7. So that is why teeth do rot.
Unbelievable. It just gives me the shivers,
Yeah,
I can't tell you.
Exactly. And now we're going to see what the acidity is with just pure water and carbonation.
Got it. Oh boy, here it goes.
Look, see?
Oh, whoa, 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 whoa.
There's 7. 7 would be pure water. It's not 7.
5.
Not 5. More acidic still.
4. That's
4.
it.
I think
pH
it's 4.
of 4.
pH 4 from just putting carbon dioxide in water. All right. So what we're going to do now is
Where's
see
this
what
poor
happened
tooth?
to the tooth. Now you recall in Elizabeth Colbert's article, she mentions Dr. Fabry.
The lady with the...
That's right. That's right. With the pteropods. And she found the shells of the pteropods, which are normally translucent, became opaque. And when this dries out, you will see that it has developed this dramatic crack. Compared with this sister tooth, what you see is how beautifully translucent it is. It almost looks polished like marble.
Yep.
This, by comparison, has dramatically eroded.
Now I can actually see the opening right through the tooth.
Precisely. Look at that crack.
Unbelievable.
Yep. And that is just in 3 weeks.
Holy mackerel.
And that is a substantial piece of tooth as opposed to a very delicate pteropod.
And this is just water.
Just water.
And carbon dioxide.
Correct.
So that's really our oceans right now.
That is what is happening in the ocean right now.
I can't get the image of that cracked tooth out of my mind. I know that a tooth and a seashell are not exactly the same, but it made me wonder what the dropping pH was doing to my dear little pteropods. Dr. Victoria Fabry, another scientist from the Seattle Conference, was actually the centerpiece of Elizabeth Colbert's article because of her work with shelled pteropods.
Oh, here it is, the lab.
Yes, welcome to our lab. This is my daughter, Madeline. Madeline, this is Mr. Huseby.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
I have to confess, I mean, people do all kinds of things on the internet, but I really do a lot of time searching for images of pteropods and reading about pteropods. I became fascinated. I would love to see any examples that you have of these little, angels, as I think of them.
I've got just what you might want.
Oh, good. Good.
Pteropods are difficult to keep in the lab. They don't feed in the lab. But I'd like to show you some video clips of pteropods.
No wonder I'm in love with them. Look at that. It's beautiful.
I think they look a little bit more like moths, although one time someone told me they looked like flying coffee beans. What do you think they look like?
A small elephant with its ears.
Like a Dumbo type elephant?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure you two are as enamored of these as I am, because I think they're just plain beautiful.
They are. They really are.
If you could share with me, Vicki, a little bit, one of the catalysts that really set you off on pteropods.
We've just gotten back from Antarctica at McMurdo Station down there. We collected pteropods. I was lucky to find a lot of them. They tend to swarm. You don't find just one, you find lots of them. I put too many of them, actually, in a jar. And like all animals, they respire carbon dioxide. So their respiratory CO2 lowered the pH within the jar to levels projected to occur by the end of the century. Within 48 hours, we saw the shell started to dissolve. They're really animals living on the edge.
Elias! Whoa! You know, it's been so long since I've done this. How long do you think it took to build a castle, a real castle?
Oh, maybe a few months.
A few months?
Yeah.
Is this the kind of wall you had in mind, Elias?
Yeah.
Good. Elias? Are dolphins fish?
Oh, no.
Dolphins aren't fish?
No way, Jose.
What are they?
They're called lungfish. They have lungs and they also have gills.
Oh, boy. Elias, look right out there. Look right out here. Follow my finger. There he is. Do you see it? Right out there. You see it? It just came up. It'll come up again. There he is.
Way over there.
Oh my God, look out there. That's right. That's huge.
So up close.
I know. That is big. Big, big. It's huge.
Man, it's so amazing. I've never seen a whale in the wild in my life. What's your favorite animal in the sea? Penguins. What's your second favorite animal? Whales.
I can't help but wonder if we can rescue ourselves from the course we're on. Do we have the will to change, or have we become too cynical and too divided? How bad do things have to get?
If you look back, say, well, when in history did something similar happen to the oceans? You point to when the dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago. You know, what if it wasn't us that discovered fossil fuels and made an industrial society, but what if it was, say, the Romans had stumbled on coal and developed automobiles and all of this? And, you know, what if their scientists were telling them, oh, well, if you continue doing this, it'll take millions of years to recover. And they say, but we really like our consumer products, and we like our Hummers and big houses and all of this. You know, would we say, oh, well, these people, they made a good, rational decision? Or would we think, oh, how could they have been so selfish and stupid just so they could have a century or two of a high lifestyle? Because there are only enough fossil fuels to last a couple of centuries, which seems like a lot to you and me, but you know, this is a tiny speck of dust compared to the length of time that we're damaging the oceans for. And the other thing about it is most economists think that it will cost something like 1 or 2% of our total economic activity to actually solve this problem, to stop emitting CO2. Yeah, the most mainstream economic assessment is that about 2% of our total economic activity. It would mean that for each dollar you spend on a soda or something, you'd have to pay $1 too. And that's what it really boils down to. And at that level, you know, so we're willing to damage the ocean for essentially millions of years because we don't want to spend 2 cents more for something. It's crazy. It's completely crazy.
That's... I had no idea that the percentage...
Yeah, 2% of GDP is what...
2%. Oh, my God. Oh, my goodness. Ah. This is becoming a very dark journey. I learned from Ken this afternoon that within 50 years, coral may be extinct. And I'm sickened by the realization that we may, in fact, live someday in a world without fish.
Oh my God, there are many. Look over there. There's one. That's another sea urchin.
Yep.
Are they sea urchins or sea anemones? Help me.
Those are anemones.
Boy, oh boy.
Oh, yeah, hi.
Yeah.
Y'all stick me into his mouth.
So look at that. It's closing up like that one.
Dude.
This is like a jungle in here.
I'm cold. Can we go inside now?
I see, Elias, that you had a map of Europe. Let me show you where I'll be going next. It's way up north. I'm going to an island called Svalbard, north of Norway.
Scientists there are doing some of the most important research in the world on the health of the oceans.
Is a community of scientists from all over the world. They come here to take advantage of the cold and cleaner ocean conditions that they find in the Arctic regions.
What do you got, this morning's catch?
No, we're bringing in clean seawater because we've got some experiments running and we have to keep the animals nice and clean.
Any chance I can tag along and see?
Yeah, for sure.
Whoa.
Thank you very much.
Terrific.
Hold the trolley.
Okay.
We've got 5 or 6 species. We're measuring their metabolic rates. For instance, if we're to struggle for a mate and you and I are to fight for a mate, it all costs energy. Now, the more acid the seawater goes, the harder the animals have to work to make their skeletons. We know there are certain levels of pH that some animals, called foraminiferans, we know they can't cope with a fairly small change in pH. They're one of the animals that lives ubiquitously around the planet, and they're very important in the ecosystem. If they go out, it has ecosystem-wide consequences.
At what point do scientists feel it's time to raise some kind of alarm?
The vast majority of scientists think we're already past the point whereby we should be concerned and we should worry. We might even see something that would remove humans from the planet. That's the threat. It's the threat to our own services. If you're not even concerned about what we're doing to other animals on Earth, there is a threat to humans here. Some scientists think that's coming within the next 30 to 50 years. Some scientists think it's coming in the next 100 years. Some scientists think it's not coming for 200 to 300 years. But it's coming.
What would you say to someone like my friend at home who says, God will take care of these things and I shouldn't get so upset and worry about it so much?
The argument I have with that is, if you were to go to heaven and you had stabbed somebody to death, God would not look kindly on you.
I would hope not.
If you go to heaven and you've ignored climate change and you've killed 50 million people in Asia because you've ignored it, because sea level's risen and they've died, are you not equally culpable? I think so too. Yeah, I've not really been helping you as much as I should, am I?
Situation normal?
Yeah, okay.
If you want to see our sampling work, we're taking a boat out tomorrow, and you're very welcome to come and join us.
I would love to do that.
You can get kitted up in your survival suit.
Okay.
And then we'll go and get a gun.
And a gun? Why do we need a gun?
Polar bears here, so we have to be...
Polar bears?
We have to be prepared.
Okay, let's...
No, but there's not too many polar bears around, but there was one spotted that way. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll learn more about that tomorrow.
Okay, then.
Okay. Can you hear the ice cracking over here? Sounds like dynamite.
Yeah, you see the glacier here, you see it's alive. It's moving and it's breaking off constantly because the whole Earth's warming up, and one of the easiest or the first things you can see it is when all the glaciers keep on regressing. So this is a very visual proof of the global warming. So, well, we are here to see what it's all about.
For years, I'd been hearing about the shrinking glaciers. But not until these huge building-like pieces were falling off the edge of the glacier every 5 minutes did I begin to wonder how it was affecting the many creatures below the surface. After all that I had seen up in Svalbard, I was eager to head south to visit my dear friend Rolf, who is one of the wisest men I've ever known. His heritage goes back to the indigenous Sami people of northern Norway.
Jammen, det var litt av en kirke. Det var ikke så liten heller.
Og det var bygd av folk her. Ikke noe offentlige greier.
Men dette var folk som tok vare på seg selv. Ja.
Rolf and his wife Gru took me to a nearly abandoned fishing community where they now had a small summer cottage looking out onto the Arctic Ocean.
It is so beautiful up here. Somebody did live here once.
Absolutely, yes. They came here because there was always food here in the ocean. There's never been a famine here. Never in history.
Hundreds of miles north of the Arctic Circle, this is not what I expected to find. Not what I expected to find.
Don't tell people.
Okay, okay, okay.
Then they will all come.
I would love to get your thoughts a little bit about changes that we're seeing. What do you think's going on?
Well, I'm certainly not an expert on this. You know, I'm a scientist, all right, but not in this field. And I think if you believe at all in science, you have to realize that the Earth is getting warmer. No question about that. So who is the culprit, you know? Who is the sinner? And we know we have contributed to this, but we also know another thing, and that is that climate changes we have had for thousands and thousands of years so that you have all these big waves and we can't do anything with the big waves. We can adapt to them, but that's all we can do. What we can do is to stop producing extra CO2 and all that. But I doubt that we can do that because it takes an enormous discipline, well over. So I think it would be much better if we could start looking for new energy sources. Solar energy, which would, of course, be probably the best in large parts of the world, maybe not here. But then you have geothermal energy. I believe a lot in that. Then we can use that time gap, the gap there, that the time we get in that way, we can use that to teach ourselves to live on this planet without destroying it.
Time. How much time do we have? It's clear with the issue of carbon and the health of the oceans, the time is getting shorter and shorter. I keep thinking about Elias, and I certainly want him to have the same sense of time as his life takes shape that I have so taken for granted in my own. I'm sitting here at the Solstrand Hotel where you came to visit. You may not remember that, but it's a very special place. It was built in 1896 by the man who was to become Norway's first prime minister.
Wow.
I've known for a long time about its rich history, but what I didn't know was that it actually is on the cutting edge of the future.
So, if I understand this now, you are heating this entire hotel without any generation of CO2.
Yes, that's true.
That's amazing.
I'm still reeling from what I really didn't think was possible, that you can take the heat out of the ocean and heat this entire complex. I find it almost miraculous.
Yes, here we have the fantastic Bjørnefjord.
Yeah.
That is where we get all the heat. And during summer, we have free cooling of the whole building.
Again from the ocean.
Again from the ocean.
You have plenty of raw material out here.
It is. We are taking water in approximately 50 meters out. There's a pump here, which is pumping all that seawater into these machines.
Extraordinary. So really, this solution would be available along coastlines anywhere?
Yes.
Is this Norwegian machinery?
Well, these machines are owned by an American company, actually.
So this is something that we could do in the States just as readily as it's done here. I've never heard of it in the States. Giant floating wind generators are to be placed in the North Sea, where the winds are strong and constant. Look at the wind bringing the power of the waves right across the rocks out there.
Out in the ocean here outside of Norway, we have enormous wind resources. As you can see now, we probably have 15 meters per second of wind.
I can't just see it, I can feel it.
You can feel it. The average wind speed out there, 40 kilometers from the shore, where we'll have wind turbines, is 11.5 meters per second.
So this would produce electricity. There would be no carbon dioxide generated.
It's probably one of the cleanest energy sources can be.
And it feels, standing right here, like there's enough wind to go around and
And is it always like this out here?
The average wind speed is so high here that just tap into a little bit of that energy will be enough for this nation, and here in Norway will be enough forever. It's much more than the hydropower. It's about 200 times more energy blowing over the ocean than what we use of electrical power today.
Are these kinds of wind conditions something that you would see off the coast of the United States as well? Or is this unique to Norway?
The northeast of the United States, and also in the northwest, and some places actually outside of Los Angeles.
What are your dreams? What would you like to see 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road?
5 years down the road, and you're invited to come back, and then we will show you a 5 megawatt wind turbine.
I will be here.
In another few years, we hope there will be large wind parks in the North Sea and also other countries. 6,000 of these wind turbines will be enough for the whole Norway, for the complete consumption of Norway.
That's extraordinary.
We have been doing this for 5 years, and we saw that it is possible to get profit for the owners of the wind parks. In the future, I think you will see that the wind power will actually be penetrating more and more into the market, much more than we see now. It's already been a boom, but I think we only see in the beginning.
Why is it so hard to make it happen?
That's hard to say. I think it's interesting to note that to cope with the problems with the CO2 probably costs around 1 to 2% of the gross net product.
That seems like such a small step to take.
The important thing is to ask the politicians and show the politicians that this is something the world wants to do. You could put the man on the moon in 10 years. I think we can do this in less than 10 years with a fraction of the cost.
It feels so good to be home, Elias. I'm really excited by what I saw in Norway. And what I learned was that right here, we have the materials in hand to make all kinds of things happen. I mean, we are, after all, a country that is famous for its inventiveness, its innovation. I want to see what is already happening here to move us in the right direction.
When I learned about ocean acidification, it became all that I could think about.
I know the feeling. Believe me, I know the feeling.
I'm definitely an optimistic person, and I think that one of the opportunities we have is that it really isn't too late to solve these problems. So a lot of the work that we do at the center is focused on sort of legal and policy strategies. And right now, there aren't really any national regulations on carbon dioxide emissions. And so we thought, well, what are the other tools that we have out there to help us? We found that the Clean Water Act, it's really the nation's strongest law protecting water quality. Because right now, the Clean Water Act, it already lists pH changes as a pollution problem. And right now, we have one of the most serious threats to water quality. And so we have asked all these different coastal states to place their ocean waters on the list of impaired water bodies because of ocean acidification. And once these water bodies are listed, states are then required to take actions to limit the pollutants causing the problem. We use the Endangered Species Act as well, which is probably our nation's strongest environmental law. Right now, the science is there. If the political will is not there yet, we're going to keep on them until they recognize that this really is an issue that needs to be addressed.
I work in the area of socially responsible investing and basically using the capital markets to create social change.
Okay.
Clean technology will most likely eclipse information technology for the 26th century, the new industry.
Yeah.
But it's all going to be focused around the idea that if you lower carbon output of something, it's going to be more valuable. And that is a technology that then you can export.
Who's making this happen? Who's driving it?
It's people who are in the solar industry, it's the wind industry, it's people who can take advantage of the fact that they're not putting carbon out. It's these types of technologies that we can develop.
What's giving investors the confidence? This seems pretty high risk because, you know, this is new ground.
But it's changed. There's a shift that's taking place politically, and I think people are seeing that. Wall Street cares about one thing, making money.
Return. Yeah.
Right. And it can go down the alleyway of exploitation as easily it goes down the alleyway of innovation and sustainability. If you can show them they'll make more money doing that, they'll go down that alleyway. If you show them they make more money doing exploitation, so you say, here, boy, go down the, it's like a dog chasing a bone. Here you go, go get the bone down the alleyway of sustainability. As far as capital investment goes, where do you want to invest your money? With a company that deals with environmental sustainability, or do you want one that's going to produce a toxic that you then have to watch that toxic for 10, 20, 40, 100 years? I'd rather invest.
It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
What am I seeing? Yeah, so welcome to the largest single corporate solar installation in U.S. history. This is a tiny fraction. Even if we look at all of the roofs around us, this is just a tiny fraction of what's been installed here. But it's a total of about 1.6 megawatts AC power. These installations cross 7 acres of solar panels, powering about 30% of the total load here at Google.
So tell me this again, Andrew, so I really can, it takes a little longer at my age. This is 1.6 megawatts of AC power.
That's right.
And it's 30% of all the power used by Google?
That's right.
Oh my God. You know, my dream, I look at this Google colored rainbow here at Google, and you know, my dream is that something like this were available for everyone.
Right now, the U.S. is not the leader. Right now, the largest markets are Germany and Japan, and Spain is even larger than the U.S. this year.
Oh, I had no idea.
And so the United States is actually sort of behind the curve on this one. And if you look at a map of the world, there are 2 places that have extraordinary solar insolation, the amount of light hitting a given patch of land. Those 2 places are the United States and sub-Saharan Africa. The United States has a lot of solar opportunity and a lot of people willing to buy and install these systems and put them up on their rooftops all over the place. Scientific America just did a big cover article last month on this. You know, $420 billion, and you would power the entire country with solar panels. And $420 billion is a lot of money, but it's half of what we're spending in Iraq.
I was going to say, we already spent that.
It makes me sick to talk about
we could power the entire country with half the war budget?
Yeah, exactly.
It's my great pleasure to introduce Sven Huseby, my teacher and friend. As a young teacher in the 60s, he was committed to engaging students and making a difference in the world through activism and inquiry. And so it is particularly relevant to invite Sven back to Putney today at this celebration of our school's bold commitment to sustainability and responsible citizenship. Welcome back, Sven.
Thank you, Matthew. It's a special pleasure to be back, to see all these students lined up along the perimeter. I can't tell you all the feelings that are running through me, and they're all very good. And my pleasure today in being here is having the opportunity to say thank you to the Putney community for having the insight, for having the wisdom, and for having the courage to go down the path of creating a net zero carbon structure, a LEED certified building. And I have to say that when I first came to Putney, I think it was the second year I was here, there was a movie that came out, and it was called The Graduate. And there's a moment in that film in which what I thought at the time was an old man, someone a bit younger than I am, leaned over to the young protagonist in the film and whispered in his ear, "Plastic." Well, I would like to lean over in the collective ears of the student body today and whisper "clean tech," because having learned over the last 2 years about the hidden cost of modern life on our oceans, I can tell you with certainty that whether you go out there as educators, as artists, as entrepreneurs, as politicians, as scientists, whatever path you choose to follow,
Know that you can be the difference with every choice you make.
Yeah.
Elias, we've been on a long journey, and what we've learned has sometimes been painful to hear, but we can still change the outcome. So my message to you is to ask hard questions, find out as much as you can, always think critically, and act to protect our oceans.
What do we see here?
Birds. Lots of them. Let's go fishing.
And what are we going to do with the fish?
Eat it. We don't want to catch fish and then waste them.
No, I agree with you.
You know what the trick is to find fish? The trick is to look for seals or birds.
Yeah?
As long as they have a fish in their mouth, that means that's where some fish is.
Because if they're eating, you know there got to be fish there. That's good thinking, Elias. You already think like a fisherman.
Yes, indeed. I hope we'll catch some fish.
Careful.
Do you think we're at a good place to fish now?
I think we might be.
I think that right there would be not a bad place.
Yeah. Okay. This is going to take a little time here. Okay, now I'm going to take the line, pull it all the way up here. Where's the hook?
Oops, it's entangled.
You got a mess here. What happened?
Do you have the hook in the mouth?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you could hurt yourself. Be careful. Look, a sea lion.
Take your finger like this. Put your thumb around here. Flick this with your other hand. Flick this. That's right. Okay. Turn it. Just stand like this. Okay.
How will we know when a fish comes?
Well, you'll feel something.
Okay, I'm ready. Hello, little fishies. Come on.
You're really fishing. How's it feel?
Good. Like dancing for the fish. Mr. Fine, you really like the ocean, don't you?
Yep.
I like it too.